What's up, guys? You're listening to the Lifestyle Hub, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes and into the lives of inspiring individuals to not only educate, but unlock your true potential to live a healthy, active, and fulfilling life. I'm your host, Jason Grima. Now let's get this show on the road. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Lifestyle Hub podcast. This is episode 21, and I hope you've been enjoying the ride so far. We're closing down the barrel, looking pretty close down to 30 episodes now. We've just crossed 20, and the last few weeks we've had some really cool guests on. Just to flash back on those, we had Harry when we focused on the mindset coaching. We've had Karen, we worked on going over her business, as well as obviously managing her family and her lifestyle at the same time. We had Sean, of course, who came on to speak about cabin crew life and managing his body transformation with the 365 physique. And then, of course, a very inspiring story with Mr. Sujit, who had been through a very difficult circumstance at the early age of when he was 20, and then his bounce back story over the last 10 years. And it was a really incredible listen. So I hope you've enjoyed those episodes so far. I'm breaking things up a little bit today with a solo episode. Just myself. It does feel a little bit strange because I haven't done a solo episode for quite a while now. It's actually been ages. We've had so many cool guests on over the last few weeks. We're breaking it up. People are traveling. Obviously, summer's here. For those who don't know, who are listening from Oz, Dubai gets pretty quiet during the summer, and a lot of people tend to travel. Obviously, the weather is incredibly hot, like 40 plus degrees most days. So like life kind of changes. You spend a lot more time inside in the malls. It's easy to get that like cabin fever feeling. So a lot of people tend to utilize the time to travel, and schools are off here. So something unlike back home, you know, you'll have kind of small breaks throughout the year. Dubai has like their main school holidays for about 8 to 10 weeks from July until the end of August. So that's when most people will make the most of getting outside and seeing the world and traveling to different countries, seeing their family. So it leaves me, you know, with a little bit more time here, because I like to save up my time, as you guys know, to like getting home to Australia at Christmas. So I kind of try to stick around Dubai in the summer and work on kind of the people that are here, because there are a lot of people here wanting to focus on transformations and whatnot. So the episodes, as we'd mentioned, have now moved to fortnightly. So over this summer period, a few other projects are coming up that I need to kind of divert attention to. So the episodes for the Lifestyle Hub podcast will move to fortnightly from now on. And there'll be a lot of info in between, guys. So stay tuned. Obviously, a lot of really cool guests coming up. But I wanted to first touch on like a few things that had happened over the last few weeks that I haven't really had a chance to speak about. And that the main one is obviously my own body transformation that I went through with James at Restrive. So I haven't actually been able to jump on and really have much of a summary on how that all went. So for a lot of you that follow, you would have seen a pretty drastic before and after image, which was like essentially a lot of people asked, the pictures were actually 24 weeks apart. So the first photo until the second photo, there is a really drastic change in both posture, muscle mass, body fat, etc. Now, we went through only a really 10-week challenging body transformation, if that makes sense. So the first 12 weeks or so was actually just making a few minor changes. And they're usually the changes that most people can get away with making to see a very rewarding step in the right direction. So when I actually went at that 10-week mark and I was like, all right, and that's when I announced on my IG that I wanted to make things a lot more challenging. And I said to you guys, I'm going to go hard for the next 10 weeks and try and get as lean as I possibly can, which was the leanest I've ever been. And I've done like 3 or 4 or 5 of these, you know, transformation phases over the last 12 years. But this one got me down to, I think I was 10.2%. So not quite the under 10, which is what I was going for, but I was pretty happy with it, to be fair. And just to kind of add a little bit of clarity, that 10 weeks was probably one of the hardest 10 weeks I have done, but it didn't actually cause me to build any negative relationship habits with food or training. When I've done this in the past, I'd actually had a really negative experience with how hard I dieted, how well I trained, and how much I enjoyed training, and obviously my relationship with food and the foods that I was allowed to eat. So the reason I went through this phase with James was to try to, I guess, change my interpretation of what a good transformation can be. And I always do this with clients, but I never had the success on doing it with myself. And that's why I went for a coach. Obviously, James, who's been in the industry for so many years now, he actually hired me from Australia. He was the manager at one of the main gyms here, Ultimate Performance, and he'd actually hired me, and that's how I ended up in Dubai. So now, we've gone full cycle, and I've actually gone over to James and said, look, put me through this transformation phase. And we started at the start of January. So the first few months was just really simple changes, things that I knew I needed to do better, but I didn't have somebody to actually hold me accountable. And that was just like getting adequate amounts of sleep, managing my stress, being a little less active because I'm like overactive, obviously with the dogs and training and work, etc. And then just trying to manage my food and, hit my protein, etc. Really basic. I almost didn't notice any changes from a lifestyle front or from the perspective of feeling like I was being, too strict or I had to make sacrifices on anything. So that was a really, really enjoyable process. I then decided to make the decision to go, I'm going to try to get as lean as I can. That's something that a lot of people might not ever really care about. And to be fair, it's not something you definitely don't need to put yourself through that kind of phase to get as lean as you can. It is not for everyone. It's not necessary for everybody. I think my personal opinion and people that have worked with me over the years, and you guys will know, I always think everybody should get to their best shape at least once. So they should try to push to see what their body is capable of. I think it's a really empowering way to see how much you can actually achieve from a physical training, muscle building, fat burning perspective. It's a very vain process, I guess, and it's all about you and how you look. But I think for a lot of people, it's really great to know that you can get to a certain space. The most important part, though, is actually not bouncing back all the way to where you started after you go through that phase. And that's something that you guys know that I focus on quite, heavily at the 365 Physique, which is about trying to find the balance between getting into your best shape and obviously living a lifestyle that you love and enjoy and sitting in that middle ground. For a lot of people, if you want to try and get in shape before a wedding or before a certain function or you're traveling, you're always only 2, 3, 4 weeks away from being in better shape. It's not like you're letting yourself blow out, but you're sitting in like this comfortable space where you can still enjoy, going out with friends, drinking, foods that you enjoy, being less strict with training perhaps. But there always needs to be that balance, of course. So where I'm going with this is, along the road and how the process went is I found it quite enjoyable for that first 12 weeks. And I think that's the part that I wanted a lot of people to know. But when I went through the second 10 weeks, it was a lot harder. There were things that I had to say no to. I did have to be much more strict with food. I did have to cut out things that I didn't enjoy, that I do enjoy. I definitely said no to a lot more like social occasions or like hangouts with Vic. We didn't really go out to many places for dinner and stuff like that. So it did take its toll. And I think that's where people need to understand that you don't get into that shape for free and that you need to be prepared to make sacrifices to get into that shape. That doesn't mean you have to try to get into that shape. Don't mix the two. But if you choose to go down that road, it won't happen. And so often I have people be like, it's just not happening. I'm not changing. I'm like, well, you're not really taking the steps to really, benefit or see those kind of changes. So that's one thing that I kind of learned from that process. The best part about it though now is I'm like, a month on since the final day and I'm totally fine. Like weight's up a tiny little bit. I'm relatively in the same shape. I had a bit of a break from training. I'm back into training. I've trained, I think 9 times this week. So full speed, I feel good. My body's actually really strong. So it was a really positive bounce back and I've actually had no major binges or blowouts or feeling like I need to just eat everything in sight, which is what had happened in previous accounts. And I think for people who have gone through this process as well, anyone who's been on any really strict diets, you guys would also understand that feeling of as soon as you stop or as soon as you allow yourself that little bit of freedom, you just go crazy and just eat whatever you can. So I think it's really important to find that balance. And I'm working with a few people at the moment who I always get people who are either side of that, scale. I've got some people who don't do enough. And I mean, a lot of people don't do enough typically. And then I've got there are a few that do too much. And it's really important about finding that balance because if you overtrain and undereat, you're going to have a lot of health implications. Same thing if you undertrain and overeat. So it's all about finding that middle ground. And I think that's something that, obviously I try to kind of educate you guys with. There's a lot of other great coaches out there that are educating and pushing that message as well. So just make sure that, take this as a minute to kind of check whatever information you're absorbing from like a coaching or nutrition perspective, that it's more or less encouraging you and promoting you to have a well-balanced mix between nutrition, training, and headspace. It's so important. So that was kind of the first part I wanted to touch on. It was just a little bit of a summary. Obviously, big thanks to James at Restrive. It was a really, really cool process, and we're still kind of going through some training steps at the moment. I always kind of lean back to a little bit more conditioning type training. I like to have the ability to be able to like feel really fit from a cardiovascular perspective. I think the last couple of weeks as the diet got more strict, I had to cut down my like running and my cycling and stuff like that so that I could actually manage being on less calories, which I didn't really enjoy because for me, that cardio is such a mental output. I like to go do 5Ks on the treadmill, gets my head in the right space that I can kind of tackle the day and, you know, I'm in the right mood and whatnot. So you've got to kind of find the right training approach, but also understand that to get certain results, you need to do certain, you know, steps or processes. So this is where having a coach will obviously be extremely beneficial. And that's where I benefited from working with James at Restrive. So that was a really cool process. And to summarize, obviously I felt really good afterwards. So that's the most important thing. You go through these transformations. If you felt like absolute shit at the end, then I'd be questioning how you went about that process, and then do what you can as quickly as you can to get back in to the routine before you let time pass. Because a lot of people will go through a process, they won't feel great about it. They'll do the things that make them feel better, which are usually a little bit of self-sabotage and usually involve food and no training, to be honest, and drinking, etc. And then they just let that gap lengthen between when they'd finished, their time off, because they're a bit hesitant to go back down that road. And then unfortunately, it actually becomes so much harder to try to restart and to get yourself back moving again. So again, find that middle ground. And it does exist, guys. A lot of the team that I work with have found that now. It takes time. Some people find it in 12 weeks. Most find it in 6 months. And, you know, the best really start to master it after 12 months is when you really have nailed that balance between the two. So, and I've been doing this for like over 12 years. So I've mastered the balance as well. But even for me, sometimes it's tricky. So that's why you just utilize, you know, the outsources around you and the different advice from people and knowledge, and you keep trying to upskill yourself. So that is the summary on the transformation that happened from, I think it was from end of April all the way till June 1st. Which kind of leads me into another point that I wanted to touch on. So obviously body positivity and inclusivity in the fitness industry. So it's so hard not to compare yourself with obviously so many different body shapes and types that you see on social media. In particular, like I'll use the example for guys more or less because this is how I can relate, but you'll so often see guys or different trainers or influencers, and this is why you've got to be so selective with the people that you follow. I'll often kind of see so many different athletes, or, you know, just not even athletes, just regular people who put themselves or think they need to put themselves through these bodybuilding competitions or these shows or these muscle shows to get into this extremely lean condition. So basically you're walking around with like a six pack, veins everywhere, extremely lean and peeled. Now, what generally happens, because I just went through this process, what generally happens is during that 12-week phase, people will take a lot of content. There'll be a lot of footage. Usually they'll do photo shoots, take heaps of images. 9 times out of 10, guys, there's only select few people that can actually maintain that kind of physique all year round. And the best coaches and the best people to follow would be the ones that are quite honest about actually showing you their process from their down phase into their training phase, their post-show, their pre-show, all that kind of stuff. Now, I'm not a big bodybuilding competition guy. You guys know that. But I think a lot of people think that fitness or being healthy and fit and looking good means that you have to have done like some sort of bodybuilding show or competition. It definitely does not. And for a lot of people going down the road of any sort of competition or bodybuilding competition or any show, I mean, maybe this will anger some people, but I would say more often than not, those people walk away with some really serious, I guess, experiences that have caused some really negative relationships with their training and their food and their mindset, and probably even pushed people away because they've thought that they had to be so strict and they wanted this certain physique so much. And quite often it's really the downfall to them actually going about the right process when it comes to health and fitness. So what I'm getting at is these people will take all of these images and then basically they'll roll them out for 12 months. So you kind of keep obviously, interacting and absorbing that content, and you keep seeing this person in like incredible condition. They're always looking lean, et cetera, et cetera. And then you kind of, in your, average job or your day to day or whatever it is, you're just trying to get in shape. And this is like the benchmark that you set yourself. And, it is literally not realistic because it's not actually even what they're doing. They're going from, and this is not even to include like the world of like anabolic steroids and all that kind of stuff where, you have people being more enhanced, through taking certain substances, etc. That's a whole nother conversation. But I'm just saying somebody gets into extremely lean condition. Let's say it's done naturally, hypothetically in this case. They roll out this insane, these insane pictures where they're like sub 10%, sub 12%, really lean all year round. And you just keep seeing this content. And then you're meanwhile going to the gym, trying to follow your program, following your diet. And you feel like you're never really getting anywhere because you've set your benchmark at this like 12% picture that this person seems to maintain for the whole year. So just kind of try to like set those expectations, and obviously don't give yourself a chance when it comes to like giving yourself a positive experience with your own body image. I think it's a really important thing, especially in society today with so much social media, that people are so quick to put pressure on themselves, judge themselves against other people, not celebrate their progress. Because guys, you do need, obviously progress is so important. And there's so many ways it can be measured. It can be measured as simply as attending an exercise regime for a couple of minutes more than you did the week before. So for some people, if you've never started, don't set that bar so high and you need to do a 5-day gym program. Why don't you just start walking for 20 minutes a day, or just 20 minutes 3 times a week? It all starts with something so basic, and then it will start to snowball. But if you set that bar and that expectation so high, like you're having that 6-pack, 12 months of the year, you are simply going to soon enough, hopefully, realize that it's not sustainable. And unfortunately, usually people go the other way rather than thinking, okay, probably what I'm seeing isn't the right information. They usually think, well, I just can't achieve this. It's simply too hard. I don't have what it takes. And then people throw the towel in. So that's something that I would say when it comes to body positivity. And I think I've had a lot of people kind of just chat to me after that process about, going through that process and that phase. And they really appreciated me sharing all the steps and when it was tough and the things that I'd ate. I mean, I probably had Zayt almost 3-4 times a week through that whole diet phase, to be totally fair. But I was just accommodating and balancing my calories. So certain things that I enjoyed having, I didn't really compromise on, but I just made sure that I kind of put my training up or I cut something else. So there is a way to balance things. And anyone that's pushing like this strict 24/7, 365-day regime, there's probably 1 or 2 people in the world that are really doing that right, or 1 to 2% people that are doing that right. And for the most part, it's probably relatively unhealthy. So don't make that mistake, guys, of comparing yourself in that perspective. Obviously the other thing that kind of leads into that main heading that I just mentioned was the inclusivity in the fitness industry. So that's obviously just understanding and appreciating that so many people are on different walks of life, and in the sense that what fitness means to them will and can be totally different what it means to you. So there's nothing wrong with somebody who's more pushing towards a strength training regime, CrossFit, sport performance. I mean, dancing counts, of course, yoga, Pilates. There's so many different ways to move your body, be active, focus on health and fitness. And there shouldn't be any point where you kind of think that one is better than the other, because there really is. For different outcomes, obviously different types of exercise will be more beneficial and more effective. That's a fact, and that's proven on so many different levels. However, for somebody to obviously enjoy being into a health and fitness routine, it doesn't make them wrong or what they're doing wrong if they're not doing something that you enjoy or you think's right. It is important, though, to know where that line is. So, for example, if you're trying to obviously build muscle and you are spending a lot of your time running every single day. So I had a client come to me. She wanted to work on building size, and particularly in glutes and hamstrings. So she wanted to build up her lower body, which I would say was just very kind of thin, skinny legs, not much shape, etc., which is something that they'd obviously addressed as an area that they were uncomfortable with. So what happened is I was kind of broke down. I'm like, cool, what are you doing at the moment for exercise? Do you enjoy obviously training? They're like, yes, I love training. I'm running 10 kilometers a day. Now, for somebody to run 10 kilometers a day, the calorie output on that is through the roof. So first of all, before we even focus on shaping the body in any way at all, we need to make sure that the calories consumed and adequate enough to be able to be in a calorie surplus to put on size. And when I say size, like any sort of mass, whether you're a female wanting to get a little bit of shape, that would still be putting on size per se. What I mean by that is the scales would need to increase, muscle would need to come up. You would need to eat more than you're actually burning. So for this individual, it was obviously so hard because they would burn maybe, I think for that 10K, they were burning about 800 to 1,000 calories every morning. And then they were only consuming, it would have been like 1,400 calories. So obviously the body burns calories at rest. Let's say in this case, for somebody of her weight and height, age, let's say roughly 1,600 calories is what her body would burn at rest. You guys know the math behind this. And then let's say then she burns another 1,000 calories. So currently we're in a deficit of energy of, let's say, 2,400 calories. The intake through her food for the day was 1,400. So we're left with a 1,000 calorie deficit. Now, the major problem there is we're 1,000 calories away from putting any sort of size on, regardless of what we do. So that's why, like in certain things, when we've got certain targets, that's where I would sort of say, okay, in this case, if you're wanting to achieve X, then we need to stop the running, or we need to minimize the running, increase the food, and then add in some strength training. So maybe we go 2 runs a week, and on those days you have high carbohydrate intake to make up for the calorie difference, and then you're focusing on strength training 2 or 3 times a week in that particular area, which is the lower body. So you can see how certain types of fitness exercise will have a certain type of outcome. So that's kind of the most important thing, is just don't kind of separate different training categories. Everyone's kind of in their own right to do certain things. I just think as long as you're following the right guidance for what you personally want to achieve. People always ask me, like, what do I want to, like, why do I train, or what makes me want to train, and why do I, do what I do? Personally, I exercise because it helps my mindset. I feel like I get extremely anxious if I don't exercise, and it affects my mood, my ability to think, my ability to be positive. So for me, exercise is a major outlet for my headspace. And it keeps me in a positive space where I can continue to encourage, obviously, all my clients, but then, be the right person at home with Fix, and then, be positive around the dogs, have enough energy for them, just to excel in my career, etc. is all through exercise. And it's always been like that since I was young. So certain people will get different kicks off certain things. Exercise is one of the most, and it's proven to be one of the most beneficial ways to increase mood. Obviously, one of the healthiest. There's a few other ways you can increase mood and be in a better mood as well, but generally they have a little bit of a down phase as well, or they're a little bit more of a negative, not much more of, I wouldn't say there's something you'd want to continue long term. Let's say you go for a drink. That's not really that will give you a short-term mood boost. You'll have a crash. It's not really a healthy habit. So you don't want to kind of play around with those kind of things because they're just not sustainable. I won't open that can of worms today because I do want to save that topic for another time, that headspace and exercise, etc. But you can kind of see where I'm going with that, guys. So for me, I train for my headspace, and then looking in a certain way is just a byproduct of that. And I like to be able to be fit. I can run 5Ks, I can run 10Ks, I can swim, I can cycle, I can do weights, I can hold my body weight, all of that kind of stuff. Now, I'm nowhere near as fit as I would say a good 60-70% of trainers here. Some trainers, especially in Dubai, there's some elite level fitness trainers. Like the level of fitness, they're competing in different competitions, lifting double, triple their weight. I'm not one of those guys, and I'm okay with that. Right now, that's not my focus. My focus is just to feel good. I would say look good, and by looking good, that's what my interpretation of looking good is. I feel, my best when, I'm a certain percentage of fat, I'm a little bit more muscular, I fit into t-shirts well, and I can wear a singlet. That's, for me, I feel good. But everyone's version of that is totally different. So just try to keep that in mind, guys. I think it's something that a lot of people have spoken to me about in the last 2 weeks, and that's why I wanted to address it today. So body positivity, set the bar at the right height. For you, build up slowly. Don't make the mistake of comparing yourself to other people. It's really important to kind of swim in your own lane and measure your own progress. And then obviously being inclusive of everybody in different types of fitness, and just understand that depending on where you want to go, there'll be a preferred type or method to actually getting there. Okay. So that's 2 things. The next part of today's a little bit like choppy because it's a single one. There's a lot of things that I wanted to kind of just quickly cover, different topics with you guys. Before next week, we'll obviously have another guest on. Next week's guest will be, I'll tell you at the end. I don't need to tell you that now. So frequently asked questions. I've had a few questions asked over the last, I think this was last Monday. People had sent through some questions. I put up a poll on my IG and I had a few questions there. So I thought, why not just address them on today's episode? The first one was, how often should I exercise? Guys, again, that one comes down to totally what your goal is and what you get out of exercising. For me, if someone asked me that, I would say every day. And when I say exercise, that doesn't mean an hour in the gym. That could just mean going for a walk. And I do that every day because I walk the dogs. But I did used to do this before I have dogs. So for me, that would be something I do every day because the goal that I want to achieve is like a relaxed mind, to feel calm and like composed and to have a chance to kind of think through things in my day. And the best time for me to do that is when I'm training. So for me, it would be every day. If you're like asking that question on the basis of building muscle, then I would say it would also depend on your experience level. You don't want to overtrain, so you've got to find that perfect balance. So how often should I exercise is a tricky one because it comes down to your goals. But as a general rule of thumb, I would be saying if you're not doing 3 to 4 days of some form of activity, I wouldn't really classify you as being somebody that exercises. So if you're just doing one activity a week and then doing nothing for the rest of the week, unfortunately, I don't think you're really maximizing the benefits enough to actually say, yeah, I'm benefiting from an active lifestyle. I don't think you'd fall in that category. So it's very easy to fall into that category. Just go walk every day. Literally 15 minutes minimum of some sort of exercise. You do, like, I think what can base that really well is like, are you building up any type of sweat? So if you're sweating at some point, you're generally going to be releasing the right endorphins that are going to, make the magic happen. So think about that. Another question was, what time of day is best to work out? So this one, interesting question. Personally, my biggest belief is in the morning. So the reason I say that is because in the morning, you have so much more control of your day. So obviously, yes, it is tricky getting out of bed. I get that. That's where you need to take the responsibility of going to bed a little bit earlier, setting an alarm, having an adequate bedtime routine, getting 6 to 8 hours of sleep. You will then still struggle to wake up. It does take time to get used to becoming a morning person. Everybody can become a morning person. I've seen that happen before my eyes for 12 years with so many people that would literally sit in front of me and say, there's no way I'm going to get up at this time. When I said to them, that's the only time I'm available, they made it happen. And sure enough, a few of them are still training with me in the morning, 6 a.m. they're in the gym. And sometimes they're there before me. So it's up to you to really make that decision. But I think sometimes when you actually start to understand the benefits, and the reason I say morning is you have so much more control of your day. I think it's a perfect window from a food perspective. You get up, have something small like half a banana. Some people don't eat before they train. You go straight to the gym, exercise, change, get dressed, and you're ready for the day. Then have breakfast. It's like the perfect flow in the morning. Then you go through the rest of your day, and no matter what comes at you, family, work, unforeseen circumstances, you know that you've already exercised. You don't have that like looming thought on your head that you need to actually train later that night. So I think that's something that you guys really need to just take into account, keep in mind, is selecting that time of day. So often people program training in the evening, things come up, it never happens. That's not always the case. I know people who have successfully trained in the evenings most of their lives, but I'm just saying as a general rule of thumb, if I was to give you the best time of the day to work out, I would swear by morning, time and time again. How long should my workouts be? So these were all workout related questions. That's why I kind of stuck them together today. So how long should my workouts be? Now, I think this comes down to, again, your training goal. It comes down to your training intensity. It comes down to your programming. I would say for busy people who you literally don't have time, you've got kids, you've got a busy work job, you've got so many people to worry about, you need to find some time to fit your time in for yourself. If you're doing 30 minutes of weights, 40 minutes of weights with a little bit of cardio, a bit of conditioning, a bit of a circuit, you will be doing just fine. If you've got an hour is always a good place to include a warm-up, some proper heavy lifting, a little bit of conditioning at the end where you get your heart rate up, and then some sort of cool down and stretch. You can get a lot of that done efficiently within 60 minutes. Now, you don't need to cross that, I would say. A lot of people, if you've got the time and you're on a different program, you're training for something specific, sure, go for over 60 minutes. I think if you're definitely pushing it if you're over 2 hours, unless you're an athlete of some kind and you're under like very strict instruction. So I would say 60 minutes is like the sweet spot. Anything probably less than 30, depending on the intensity. I mean, I don't know. Some people swear by 20-minute workouts. Personally, I think unless they're done at the right intensity, it can quite often, be a little bit of a waste of time. So I would say that 20-minute workouts comes down to intensity. If you're pushing hard, you're good. Okay, so the next one, I've got 3 more questions. They're actually quite good. Do I need to warm up before workouts? So this is a good one. I would say yes, there does need to be some form of warm up prior to working out. So what I mean by that is you wouldn't walk through the door, put your bag in the locker and go straight into the floor and start lifting, straight into lifting some weights. You would be doing some lifting, but not lifting weights that are actually going to be causing the right amount of stress on your body to grow. If you were to do that, so for example, let's say you squat 50 kilos, you come in cold, you go straight under the bar, it's 50 kilos on because you need to do the same weight you did last week, and you start performing reps, it's very likely that you will cause yourself a pretty nasty injury. So the best way to warm up for something like that, let's say you're going into sort of any lifting, is you don't necessarily need to do this big cardio activation warm up unless you have specific areas you're trying to focus on. But if you are simply just like coming in for, let's say, a lower body day in the gym, I would often warm up my body with like 5 minutes on some sort of cardio just to get my lungs moving, but also to just get my mind focused on the program. So when I'd hop on, let's say, the bike before leg day, I'll get the program up. I'll have a look through. I'll kind of eye off the machines that I'm looking for. I'll go, okay, sweet. I'm here. This is the focus. I've got 60 minutes. Watch is on. Let's go. Then I'll get over to the first machine and I'll do a few warm-up sets. So let's say it's a hamstring curl to start off with. I'll start with like one set of 25, really light. And then I'll have a couple seconds rest, not long. Then I'll put it up, increase it slightly, and then I'll do 15 reps. And then I'll do another set, maybe 6 reps, and I'll increase it slightly. Then I might do like 1 rep or 2 reps at my working set. So which is the weight that I did the week before. Once I've warmed up, I've had a bit of a feel for the weight before, I'll give it like a minute, get my mind ready, and then I'll launch straight into that first set. And then from there, guys, I'll basically go 1, 2, 3, okay, through those sets. So I'll literally be straight into those working sets at that point. So that's kind of the best way to warm up. If you're doing a bit more of a performance-based exercise or sports performance-based, you'll have like sports-relevant warm-ups or activations that you can participate in. So don't overthink the warm-up, guys. It is important. It is important. It should be 5-10 minutes max. You don't need to spend longer than that. Otherwise, again, you're probably not being very efficient. Should I do strength training, cardio, or both? Okay, this is an interesting one. I think, again, a lot of things depend on what you're training for, but I would say to have a balance of the two in a session, let's say a 60-minute session, isn't going to be a problem. Typically keep the cardio towards the back half of the workout personally, because I think sometimes it can actually create issues with your ability to potentially, put the high amount of output that you would like into your strength lifts. So I would put that cardio at the back end of your workout. Okay. But so you can definitely utilize both, or you can have a set strength day and a set cardio day. Again, if you're not sure about this and you really have no idea, this is where you would outsource to some sort of training professional. And should I lift weights for strength training? 1000%. 1000%. Everyone should lift weights regardless of what you're training for in some shape or form. Every goal should have an element of strength training at a certain phase in the programming. If you're a triathlete, there'll be an off season where you do strength training. I've got a client with me at the moment. He's in his off season. He's doing strength training, and he'll start his races towards September. Okay. And have his race season. Now he's in the off season phase. Pre and postnatal, you'll do some forms of strength training, postural based, core development based, etc. Depending, there's obviously a lot of fine lines, but I would say everybody, no matter what your goal is, you should be lifting weights at some point in your training week. Okay. Cool, guys. I hope you found those questions useful. I had a few people ask those, and I had a few doubles there as well. So it's hopefully giving you guys some information that you needed. Let's kind of just tick over. There's a few more topics I want to kind of touch on quickly before we wrap up today. Recovery and self-care. Okay. So this fits on perfectly after me just discussing those training points. So recovery and self-care. Now you're going through the process of a training program. A lot of what we do is about like energy out, pushing hard, lifting heavy, burning our lungs out, working. And that could be in the gym or just in life in general. We're always pushing hard. Quite often do we see people burning out both outside and inside the gym because they're not taking time for self-care and recovery. a few ways you can utilize recovery outside the gym. I'm going to start with first. And self-care. So a few would be like, let's say externally from exercise and training and your body's physical recovery would be like your mental recovery. And that would be something like shutting off your phone at a certain time every day. Okay. So you can clear yourself, reset, watch something on TV that has no meaning. It just relaxes you. Go for a walk, spend some time with family, meditate. That's a really, really great one. Meditate, do some breathing exercises. I just recently downloaded an app called box breathing, and literally it's an app and it kind of goes through these it's like a grid and it's got 4 stages, and it will be like inhale and it will kind of count 4 seconds, and then it will say exhale, hold, and then it will repeat. And I've been doing that before bed just to kind of get my breathing to calm me down. It's a really amazing little tool. So there's a few little methods like that, trying to shut off time from social media, plan some travel time, get away from work, get out of the office. Take breaks during your workday where you get out of the office and you actually get some downtime. So little things like that can help with the recovery of your mind throughout your workday and allow yourself some self-care. So many times I have clients that will train with me for 4 weeks hard. And, obviously this is on top of their lifestyle with their kids, they're being a parent, their work. And I'm like, when did you last go for a massage or get some sort of relaxation or, have your muscles or your body treated at all? And they're like, oh, I couldn't tell you when. And so that's something that you should schedule into your calendar. For certain people, it might be more frequently, but I think everybody needs to have it at least a month. You should go for some sort of massage or recovery of some kind. So there's so many little things and tricks we can do outside of the gym. I think when we come back, even reading, guys, listening to certain music, things where you just switch off from the hustle bustle of society. If we bring it into gym context, I think it's so important and I recommend to my clients to have a bit of a small stretch routine every day. That doesn't need to be tabbed onto your exercise week. That can literally be at any other point during your week, so in your day, sorry. So for me, mine is either when I first wake up, I'll go downstairs, the dogs have a bit of a run in the garden, and I sit outside and do a few stretches for 10 minutes. I just listen to the birds, and basically it's still just becoming the sun's just coming up. So the sun is rising is basically what I'm trying to say. And I'll just do some stretches there. And then I'll also do a little bit of stretching in the gym. If somebody's late or I've got a bit of a gap between clients, I'll just jump down, do some foam rolling. You can find the right time to add those little things in. So it could be stretching. It could be allocating a designated day to do some sort of yoga or Pilates or some sort of breath work, meditation, any sort of therapies like sound healing. There's so many other cryotherapy, ice bath recovery, sauna, steam room. There's so many different things from a training perspective, which is going to help reduce inflammation, which will actually allow you to increase your output in the gym. And I think a big mistake people make is overtraining, under recovering, and they just hit this burnout. And if you're lucky enough not to get a really major injury that forces you out, your performance will just dip. And you actually won't get any better, any fitter, any stronger, any faster, none of that. So you'll just stall. And that's really not the right place to be. So that's something to think about, guys. And I think that leads me into the next point. Today flows really nicely, but that leads me into the next point, which is training phases and understanding training phases. I think to make training consistent, you need to be aware that training will go through phases. There'll be phases where you feel good and you're in a strong phase or a strong cycle, and there'll be phases where you don't feel as good. But that doesn't mean you just throw in the towel. It doesn't mean you're going backwards. Your programming should also accommodate for this. So whoever you're working with and your trainer should have what's called deloads or different structure in the programming. So for example, with the 365, I will really emphasize the change between different phases, more or less every 12 weeks, where we'll focus on elements of strength. We'll push more to conditioning and cardio and building up our cardiovascular systems. We'll move into a bit more athletic, so a little bit more like performance or a bit more, I guess, alternative training types, a bit more conditioning as well. And then we'll move into deloads in between each of those phases where we drop the reps back, we drop the volume back, we drop the load back. And it's just about turning up, feeling good, nice light sweat, letting the body recover. The last week I went and got a tattoo done. I think it was 2 weeks ago on my back. So I haven't been able to really train. I took a whole week off. And Mum's going to kill me for when she listens to this, by the way. But I'd basically had a week off training, and I was a bit worried that I was losing touch, and I just finished the boot camp of the diet phase, transformation. And I was worried that I was going to kind of throw it all away, and I was not doing much. I was still keeping my nutrition on point though. And then I came back this week and I set myself a training program. It's quite an intense training program, but I'm like really enjoying it so far. And literally today, like I was saying before, is like 9 sessions in. So I've got like a morning session, which is my main session. And then I'll do like a light cardio session later in the day. Like honestly, it's light. It'll be like a 30-minute jog or a 30-minute walk or a 30-minute cycle, something really small like this that doesn't take much time, doesn't take much thought. But it's so important that I actually had that downtime phase because I've actually come back super strong this week and the body's feeling good. And on top of that, tomorrow I've allocated in a self-recovery day, which means I'll do my hard session in the morning and then I'll have an ice bath afternoon. So I've like allocated that training day. Today's a stretch day. So you've just got to try and find that perfect phase and that perfect programming. And a lot of the time, guys, if you're kind of walking around the gym blind, which I have seen a few people lately, who are kind of just going from machine to machine. I was actually having a chat to the other guy just showing him this machine that he'd literally been hopping on for weeks. He wasn't sure what muscle was actually working until I'd kind of gone through the phases with him. Do yourself a favor, guys. Your time is valuable. Don't waste it walking around the gym having no idea what you're doing. Take the time, and there is a little bit of investment, but even not, if you're not wanting to spend at the minute, there's a lot of stuff online, but just take the time or an investment in some case to just upskill yourself just for like an 8-week or even a 4-week phase to learn how to program for 4 weeks to go into the gym with purpose. And you guys will definitely see the results. You also feel good. Your body will adapt. And there'll be so many benefits. So something to definitely think about. So training phases, make sure you have those, which leads me to our final topic as we wrap up for today is obviously goal setting, because summer is here. So for a lot of people, especially in Dubai, I'm going to target you guys, you're traveling now. So what that means is like, already I've had so many clients be like, all right, well, I'll see you in a month, which is all good and well because we've worked really hard up until this point. But, I mentioned this into one of our previous episodes where I talked about travel. It's so important to just not let it all go. Okay, if you're going to a destination for a short period of time, I'm in Rome for 1 week, fine. You're going to be walking every day, so your steps in activities through the roof. Generally, when we travel to any sort of destination sightseeing, you're going to be walking a lot, typically. So let's say you're traveling, you're walking heaps, and you're eating lots of pizza and pasta and etc., and you're enjoying the city, gelato, whatever, drinking, etc. That's fine because it's a week. It's not going to kill you. Even 2 weeks, like you're going to be fine. You're walking a lot, your activity's up, fine, you're consuming extra calories. There's a few little ways you can moderate that. Have a light breakfast if you know you're going to have a big lunch. If you're going to have a big dinner, have a small lunch. You decide. Obviously, don't stuff yourself, but it will happen. But just focus on going, okay, this is my small trip. I'm going to train right up until I'm going to go away, keep active, enjoy myself. And then when I come back, I'm going to get back into training. Set those precedents before you actually go. It makes it so much easier to come back. For those going for like the 4 weeks to like seeing family in, let's say, Canada or India or wherever, if you're going to a destination where it's family based, you're in like a similar like day in, day out routine. You're just at your mum's place or your place. You're seeing your kids, your friends, your family. That's when I would say to you, like, add back in that training program. Doesn't have to be what you might have done when you're in Dubai, which might be 4, 5, 6 days a week. But if you do 2 or 3 days a week, where you either find a gym and allocate a few training days, I've sent heaps of programs out in the past in regards to band workouts, body weight workouts, buying a set of dumbbells off Amazon, just leaving them at that house so that when you come, you can use them. Get some sort of exercise routine so that when you come back, it's not like you've just lost everything. You start from ground zero. And 9 times out of 10, if you do something, even if it's minimal, it will make all the difference for your return. You won't feel like you've lost as much as you think. And it can literally be game changing when it comes to progress, when it comes to your mindset. Because for a lot of people, they'll feel like shattered when they come back and they've like not trained for 4 to 8 weeks and they have to feel like they're starting all over again. Don't make that mistake. Of course, that's going to be hard. You know better than that. So just take those small steps that I mentioned just then to kind of prevent that from happening. So I would say that is my tips when it comes to goal setting over the summer. Don't set massive targets if you're traveling over the summer. That's not the time to set big body composition goals, performance goals. The goals there is to literally just come back feeling good and get back into training. And then let's say, for example, you want to, commit to an adventure race in December. You would come back and say, sweet, I'm away for 2 months. I'm going to just do some light running when I can. The weather's nice. I'm going to do a little bit of stretching and some body weight, some push-ups. And then when I get back, I'm back into my training and I have September, October, November, and then I'm ready for my race. And that's how you would set the right expectations, okay? And you enjoy that downtime, your training phase is set up correctly, and then you're ready to go to kick some goals. So guys, just to summarize, today obviously we've chatted through some really cool topics. We talked about just the summary of my transformation. We touched on positivity in the industry and inclusivity. I answered a few questions, so if you wanted to hear those again, just scroll back. Of course, as always, guys, as you listen to the episodes, if you have any questions, just swing them my way. I'm more than happy to answer them. I will try to keep the solo episodes here and there. My voice has been nonstop now for almost an hour. But we do have some really cool guests coming up. So next episode, which will be episode 22, we have Dr. Seema, who is one of my clients, but more importantly, a leading obstetrician in Dubai. She's incredible, and I'm really excited to have her on. It'll be her with Victoria and myself. There'll be the three of us on that episode, so it's going to be quite cool. Obviously going to talk about all things when it comes to pre and postnatal, pre and post pregnancy training advice from obviously my side. I am a qualified pre and postnatal coach, but from her side as well, being a doctor and somebody that takes people through that process, she is actually one of the fittest people that I have in my team at the moment. She's extremely active, extremely capable. You'll be very inspired by, her youthfulness and her energy, which she definitely needs to do the job that she's doing. When I spoke to her about how long some procedures can go for, the physical side to what she's has to do as she goes through these processes, she's very inspiring. And that's why I invited her onto the Lifestyle Hub podcast. And I'm really excited that she's actually agreed to come on. So that will be our next episode. And then guys, obviously stay tuned from week to week so you can hear the episodes as they are released. But that's it for today. Any other questions, let me know, guys. But thank you so much for listening. I hope you benefited from today's episode of the Lifestyle Hub podcast. Until next time, I'll catch you later. Alrighty, guys. Lastly, before we go, I do have a quick favor to ask you. If you're enjoying the Lifestyle Hub podcast episodes, please take a moment to firstly give us any feedback, subscribe, like, and share. If you have any questions or any topics in particular you would like to hear, please let us know in the comments below. Please make sure you turn on post notifications so that you can be notified as soon as the episodes are released, which is every single Monday. It's our focus to try to get that to you every single week. Thank you so much for listening in. This is the Lifestyle Hub podcast. I'm your host, Jason Grima. Until next time, catch you later.